40 finale against the Global Stars, winning the league's new round-robin tournament to cap off the festivities. LeBron James sat out the All-Star game due to a foot and ankle injury. It's the first time he's missed the All-Star game in his career. He also sat out the Lakers' win over the Pacers last weekend because of the same injury. Women's hoops on Sunday, number 7, UConn beat South Carolina 87-58. The number 4 Gamecocks' 71-game home winning streak came to an end. William Byron captured the checkered flag for the second straight year at the Daytona 500, charging from 9th to 1st in the final overtime lap. Bundle auto and home, renter, condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Ever have one of those days where your gut just feels blah?
Ugh, yes.
Occasional bloating or gas could be signs that your gut is out of balance. But Align Probiotic can help. Align 24/7 Digestive Support is a daily use probiotic with a unique strain to help relieve occasional digestive issues. It's the #1 doctor-recommended brand. So when you feel the signs, it's time to try Align. Align Probiotic. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time. The next time you're out to dinner with friends, you can order the shrimp cocktail for the table. And maybe you'll realize it only comes with 4 shrimp after you've already given away 3, but that one shrimp will be so good. And if you switch and save hundreds, you could get shrimp all the time. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For shrimp, Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
How many SportsGrid listeners does it take to change a light bulb?
It takes 2.
1 to change the light bulb, and 1 to see if our mobile app can provide the same amount of light. Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
A new week begins right here, right now, live on Football Full Circle. It is FFC, all a part of the SportsGrid Radio Network. Sirius XM, channel 159 as well. He is the mastermind of the pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. We are officially in the offseason. It has now been a full week of the offseason since the conclusion of Super Bowl 59 between the Eagles and the Chiefs in Philadelphia's second Lombardi Trophy in the last 8 years. Lisi guy, this weekend you were down in Atlantic City. That's pretty close to Philly. Did you feel any of the good vibes and the waves coming up from the city of brotherly love, having their celebration and parade on Friday afternoon?
Yeah, it was a carryover effect. A lot of people down in AC wearing the Eagles championship jerseys. All the stores had all the Eagles garb, and even ran into DRS down there. He was rocking a little Eagles stuff. So, obviously the hangover continued straight through the weekend.
They're having a good time. That's got to be the case. Nolan Smith, no doubt he was hungover on Saturday morning. Probably Quinyon Mitchell as well. The young stars of that Birds defense tossing back a couple 2-tree on Friday, but as they should in that celebratory environment. Looked like a great scene in Philadelphia. Plenty out there to watch the Eagles drive their way down Broad and hoist that Lombardi Trophy up in to the air. Donnie told a great story that on the broadcast in regional Philadelphia, you were getting a lot of FCC battles. Anytime a microphone was put in front of either an Eagle or an Eagle supporter, a couple of birds were flying, if you catch my drift. So a good time in Philadelphia, to say the least. Joe, elsewhere in the greater Northeast area, reportedly not so great of a time for Aaron Rodgers. We got the official word last week from the Jets that New York is parting ways with Aaron Rodgers, moving on at the quarterback position. But a report that came out earlier this morning from the New York Post, Aaron Rodgers tried very hard to make a last-ditch effort, one last pitch to the New York Jets, why they should bring him back, why he should return as the quarterback in 2025. Basically, Joe, to be told no by the new brass for Gang Green.
Yeah, maybe now Aaron Rodgers will wake up and realize that the team is bigger than himself, and that in order to win championships, you have to be all in. And maybe whatever team he does go, in fact, to in terms of the offseason, he could bring maybe some success. But at the end of the day, the Jets made the right decision by not bringing back Aaron Rodgers. Forget the play on the field. Maybe he could still play to a semi-all-pro type of career or season, but that wasn't the reason why the Jets decided to move on. You have a first-year head coach in Aaron Glenn that this team needs continuity in the locker room, and with Aaron Rodgers in that locker room for 2025, it would be a circus, and they made the right decision. Hopefully now the Jets can have some success with Aaron Glenn in year number one.
And again, Joe, it does become a big question what the New York Jets, from their own perspective, are going to do at the quarterback position. 7th overall draft pick for New York this upcoming April in that opening round. Not exactly prime position to get your quarterback in your face of the franchise for your organization's future. And when you think about who they have on the roster, Jordan Travis, 5th-round pick this past year out of Florida State. Tyrod Taylor, not exactly an heir apparent in waiting. But, Joe, of course, now in the offseason, a lot of conversation will be about the individual, Aaron Rodgers, and what he decides to do next. Will he return to the NFL? Will he question his football future and maybe retire if he decides he wants to play in 2025? Where would he want to go? What team would want to have him? Lisa Guy, earlier today on the early line, courtesy of the FanDuel Sportsbook in Canada, they give you those next team odds for Aaron Rodgers. 2 best prices, the Steelers at 3-1, the Raiders at plus 450. Where do you think if, and it's a big if, Aaron Rodgers wants to return to the National Football League, he could play in 2025?
Well, I think the Steelers are a good fit just because you saw what they did with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, bringing both of those players on to sort of, bridge the gap and elevate them to a playoff caliber type of season. They were able to get there but couldn't get over the hump. And that's one area where I think, Pittsburgh could fit a need. I think the other one, and we have to see what transpires, but would he go to the LA Rams if Stafford does get shipped, according to reports, or Stafford leaves to maybe a team like the New York Giants? Does Sean McVay take that, that all-pro type of player, mature quarterback, and try to elevate the team to an NFC championship? Or is it San Francisco? Should they not sign Brock Purdy? I mean, those are 2 areas. Las Vegas, to me, Ben, I don't know if it's going to be that great of a fit. Pete Carroll, great coach, I believe. Tom Brady, they want to change the culture and the landscape. Are you going to go to Aaron Rodgers to do that, knowing that he wasn't able to do that in New York? That would be a bad fit, in my opinion, even though they have a major need at the quarterback position. I think another guy would fit, maybe Sam Darnold, but anybody else outside of Aaron Rodgers for Las Vegas.
I do really think, Joe, it's almost a 3-part checklist. Check number 1, does Aaron Rodgers want to retire or return to the NFL? Okay, if yes, follow the float chart. Check number 2, where does Aaron Rodgers want to go? And then check number 3, does that place immediately make him quarterback number 1? Is he the starting quarterback from the day he walks in? Perhaps in Pittsburgh, where both of the QBs that mainly played this year and started games for the Steelers in 2024 are free agents, both Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, not currently under contract when the new year begins in the NFL with Pittsburgh. They are going to need a quarterback, Joe. Thus, if Aaron Rodgers wants to go to the Steel City and the interest is mutual, you would think he becomes quarterback number 1. But you just listed a couple of places that are going to need a quarterback this offseason. The Steelers, the Raiders, the Titans, the Browns, the Jets are one of them as well. The Saints. I don't know necessarily, Joe, if a lot of these spots around the NFL are going to name Aaron Rodgers QB1 just because he walks into the facility. And then you would almost think that Aaron Rodgers, in his own esteem and ego and belief in himself, probably not all that thrilled with the idea of being involved in a quarterback competition. I do think that is a big component of that 3-part checklist for a place that Aaron Rodgers could end up this offseason.
And I don't think he wants, if Aaron Rodgers chooses to play football, Ben, I don't think he wants to be part of a major rebuild, right? So, and that's really what Las Vegas is, or at least 2 years, 3 years out from at least competing at an elite level. That's why he went to the New York Jets, because they had the defense. They claimed they were only a quarterback away from potentially challenging from an AFC East title and, more importantly, an AFC championship. And knowing what they did there and thinking that he's going to go to Cleveland, he's going to go to the Saints, he's going to go potentially to Tennessee if they trade the number 1 overall pick, I think it's ridiculous. I think there's only maybe 3 options that he would go to if he's guaranteed the option to start. One of those definitely is Pittsburgh, because they're a playoff team already.
Yeah. Would he consider the Brett Favre route and go from Green Bay to New York, back to divisional foe in the Minnesota Vikings? Maybe, but the Vikings are making this J.J. McCarthy's team. I don't think Aaron Rodgers becomes a starter, perhaps just some sort of veteran guide or presence in that quarterback room and locker room. I don't know, Joe, exactly how robust the market is for Aaron Rodgers' services, and I'm sure it's something he is going to consider throughout this offseason. If it makes sense for him to come back to the NFL, wants to go out on his own accord, right? And the Jets, by all reports and indications, kind of made that decision for him. We'll see how it plays out this offseason. We'll talk about that first overall pick and some more betting markets associated with the Tennessee Titans next on FFC.
4 out of 5 scientists agree it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. And we're pretty sure that one scientist is still a virgin. He just gives that vibe. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The IRS will lay off thousands of probationary workers in the middle of tax season, according to sources familiar with the agency's plans, and cuts could happen as soon as this week. This update brought to you by Cintas. This comes as the Trump administration intensified sweeping efforts to shrink the size of the federal workforce by ordering agencies to lay off nearly all probationary employees who had not yet gained civil service protection. It is unclear how many IRS workers will be affected. A fatal accident involving multiple vehicles and a tractor-trailer shut down traffic for a time on a stretch of I-20 in the Dallas area early Sunday. The tractor-trailer fell off an interstate highway ramp and onto the ground before it eventually caught fire. When the tractor-trailer crashed to the ground, it hit another truck below and killed its driver, according to the Dallas County Sheriff's Department. No other fatalities have been confirmed. Local emergency crews in the area of the crash were already dispatched to the accident when Dallas firefighters were contacted at around 1:30 a.m. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Confidence is knowing you're ready to handle whatever comes your way. That's what it feels like to take on your workday with Cintas. They make sure your AEDs are up to date, your fire extinguishers are tested and inspected, your floor mats are cleaned and delivered, and your workwear looks good, feels good, and is freshly laundered with the Cintas Apparel Plus program. So are you ready to take on today? Visit Cintas.com.
Oh, I'm ready!
And get ready for the workday.
Progressive knows finding your new home was a dream come true. You wanted a walk-up with central air and a skylight, and you found it. Now, every Friday night, you get to fall asleep to the sound of your downstairs neighbors' dance parties. Progressive can't save you from your noisy neighbors, but we can save you money when you bundle your home and auto with us. Get a quote at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
There's something you should know and always remember. SportsGrid does not increase luck. We're your unfair advantage for the latest sports gaming information. If you're looking for luck, go find a horseshoe. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Shout out to our Canadian neighbors. By the way, not in hockey. Ha 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 ha, you guys. But our Canadian neighbors, Joe, have a couple less restrictions when it comes to the odds that they can bet on. And thus, the FanDuel Sportsbook up in Canada has a couple of markets that are great for the offseason in times like this. Instead of making mock odds or having those kind of conversations, it generates our discourse here on FFC. We just talked about it. The favorites to land Aaron Rodgers, his next team in the NFL. There's also a betting market, Joe, up on FanDuel Canada for who is going to pick first overall in the 2025 NFL Draft. Of course, right now, the Tennessee Titans hold that first overall selection. But as we learned last week, new GM in Nashville, Mike Borgonzi, is going to listen to some calls if there is perceived interest in that first overall pick. The Titans, Joe, on FanDuel Canada, still a hefty favorite, minus 300 to make that number one overall selection come late April in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Do you think there is any chance, though, Lisi Guy, the Titans are not the team picking first overall in just a few months?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it, right? They should pick a quarterback because of where they are in terms of a rebuild, and if potentially, Cam or Shador turn out to be a number one, elite all-pro like Jaden Daniels, they're going to be kicking themselves. But this organization has made stupid moves in the past. And again, I understand a different GM, but the organization as a whole has made some idiotic moves as it relates to the quarterback position and just moves throughout the course of history, right? Trading A.J. Brown and what they've done. So I wouldn't rule it out. Certainly not, especially since it's not a clear-cut class outside the top two, Ben, that if maybe the price was right and they got a crazy trade, I could see them moving out. Do I think they should do that? No. But, money talks. And at the end of the day, if they have the opportunity to stack draft picks, no matter where they are, they might think about it.
And, Joe, it really will come down to their evaluation as well. We'll get to Cam Ward and the quarterback conversation for that first overall pick in just a moment. And although Tennessee needs a quarterback desperately, and you would think picking first overall, they have the chance to change their entire direction of their franchise if they get it right with their QB pick. Joe, if Mike Borgonzi and the rest of the front office staff and the scouts and the evaluators for the Titans are not sold on Cam Ward or Shador Sanders or Jackson Dart or anybody else with that first overall pick, maybe they think the guys are good but not worthy of the first overall pick or a first-round pick, whatever it might be, however they slice it up, then it doesn't really make sense for them to use that first overall pick, especially if there are other NFL teams also in desperate need of a quarterback that think the world of Cam Ward or the world of Shador Sanders, who would be up to moving up to that spot. So it's really not just a team trying to draft their own quarterback, but it's the evaluation piece for Tennessee itself. Again, it would make too much common sense, Joe, just based on need right now, for the Titans to say, we've got the first overall pick. We were terrible last year. We need a quarterback. Will Levis is not the answer. Here we go. It's Cam Ward or Shador Sanders. But if the Titans aren't in love with either guy, or certainly not believing either is worthy of that first overall or top 5 or top 10 value that you could attain to their draft selection, then yeah, it would not surprise me to see Tennessee move out of that spot at the moment.
Yeah, and again, it's a business, right? We talk about certain GMs having a vision. You have a new GM in place. Maybe that vision is long-term successes, stockpiling draft picks, and filling out major needs across the board as opposed to just getting one guy with the number one overall selection. Again, I think they should take it, but money talks, and I keep going back to that. It depends on the team and what they're willing to give up to get that number one spot if they cherish or covet one of these quarterbacks, Cam Ward or Shador Sanders. So, again, and if they're not falling from one, let's say they fall from one to within the top 5, you're not losing that much steam, especially if your desire was never to take one of these guys in the first place, right? So that's, we'll get more of this after the combine. Sure. Once we get those, obviously, risers, somebody is going to come off the charts, whether it be an offense or defense, a phenom that's just going to test so well. They're going to be mentioned with Cam and Shador as the potential guy to just maybe potentially steal the spotlight.
And that combine really officially begins February 24th, exactly 1 week from today. So we are about to enter the thick of draft season, smokescreen season, lying season, this report, this team that, to really try to make sense of all of these odds available. Joe, I would be a little bit surprised if the Titans are not the first overall pick. I would be very surprised if ultimately it is not a quarterback off the board first. I still do believe that Cam Ward will be the first overall selection. Maybe not made by Tennessee, but if the Titans are moving out of that spot, are the Titans moving out of that spot so that somebody else can come up and draft Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, so on and so forth? No, I do believe that somebody is coming up to pick Cam Ward and or Shedeur Sanders. So as we shared, FanDuel Canada minus 300 still for the Titans to make that first overall pick. But the favorite to go first overall is still Cam Ward out of Miami, Joe, at minus 140.
Yeah, and deserving. I mean, Cam Ward, even though he lost a couple of games at the University of Miami, every game he played, he stepped up. I don't think there's one game, even the loss to Georgia Tech, still put up solid numbers. So at the end of the day, Cam Ward deserving. I think, again, we talked about this decision a couple of years ago with Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, right? Different types of quarterbacks with Cam and Shedeur. Shedeur, the pure pocket passer. Cam has better mobility and better legs. He's not a pure Jaden Daniels guy, but he could tuck it and run if need be, and he definitely extends the pocket. So we'll see what teams need and view as the better quarterback. Personally, I think it's Shedeur, but Cam is deserving of being right there, neck and neck.
Yeah, absolutely so. And Shedeur Sanders will be a part of that number one overall pick conversation. And who makes that pick is a very different story than who goes off first when it all is said and done. We'll have some more NFL news and notes on the other side of the break. Live right here on Football Full Circle on SportsGrid Radio.
There's smart and there's not smart. Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Keep it here and win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
In 1933, the National Football League Championship, the first title game of the NFL, was held at Wrigley Field. The Chicago Bears beat the New York Giants 23-21. The Giants took a 16-14 fourth quarter lead, but Bill Carr's 19-yard touchdown reception in the final 2 minutes gave Chicago the championship in front of 25,000 fans. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Full self-driving cars are still not reality, but most modern vehicles now offer some kind of driving assistance like lane keeping or automatic braking. New North Carolina State research tests 3 ways to get a distracted human driver to take control. Number 1, warning bells. 2, spoken instructions.
Please avoid the bridge abutment.
And number 3, a more conversational approach.
Tell me, what did you eat for lunch? By the way, that's a bus.
And the winner, conversation.
I'm not sure where we're going, but I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
Follow me at Capalbo on X and stay tuned to The Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast.
When the Major League Baseball does the home run derby, they don't send the 25th guy on every baseball team to go do the home run derby and think people are going to tune in. That's what the NBA does now for their slam dunk contest. They're Mac McClung, Winver, nobody cares. Can't pick these guys out of the lineup, and it's been that way for 15 years now.
It's Pharrell, Coast to Coast with Scott Farrell. Weekdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, on the home of the winning edge, the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go, there you are. Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you. So now you can get the winning edge anywhere. Even while the wife's talking to you. If you got an earbud. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. Some other news and notes from around the National Football League this weekend. Joe, last week, the Jacksonville Jaguars still trying to figure out their general manager position. Tons of interviews virtually. Well, the Jags have whittled down the list to 5 finalists who will all interview in person in Duval County this upcoming week. I'm not going to list off the names. You probably have never heard of these guys, but it is important, Joe, that the GM spot in Jacksonville soon to be filled, it would seem, but the Jags made it a point in this offseason to get rid of Trent Baalke, to make sure they could keep Liam Cohen, and Liam Cohen is kind of the anchor, the spearhead of this organization. Joe, you know that Cohen is very much involved in this general manager search to try to align that vision for the franchise.
Yeah, and you go back and you look at certain, situations with the GM and the coach. The Jets were an organization that never got it right, with the Joe Douglas days. And look at the success that they had on the football field. So, Liam Cohen is a guy that has a great offensive mind, has really come up along the ranks and really elevated Tampa Bay's offense last year, and now has a very good pool of young talent in Jacksonville. And you want the right GM in place, right? You have a star potential quarterback in the making in Trevor Lawrence that has been hot and cold over the past couple of years. But hopefully you get him back on track with the right GM and the right free agent signings, especially leading up to draft day. You could be a conference champion contender, and that's what the hope is in Jacksonville, right? They made it to a playoff a couple of years ago. There's no reason why this roster shouldn't compete at the very least for a division title this year.
Yeah, again, Joe, I would agree with you in terms of that. And they are trying to make sure that everybody is in the same boat, which I guess really has not been the case in Jacksonville the last few years. So we would expect at some point this week, probably late this week, end of week, Jacksonville to have a new GM in place. New GM, Liam Cohen, 39 years old, and of course the quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, about to enter year number 5 in the NFL, all trying to move things the right way. I'm fascinated, Joe, to see what the Jags win total is going to be for 2025. It was 8.5 entering this previous season. Some juice on the over. Expected to challenge Houston within the AFC South. Not a super strong division, of course. So I still think the win total is probably going to be around 8.5, even with a rookie head coach in place and Liam Cohen.
Yeah, you can't. Here's the thing. You can't put it at 6.5, right? You can't put it at 7. They're going to get clobbered with that number, right? I mean, they're going to get so many people to the over, especially when you look at parity within the South. Outside of Tennessee, the other 3 teams can win and beat each other up. So you can't say Jacksonville, can't potentially go 4-2 in the division and then win another 4 games outside of the division or conference, right? So at the end of the day, 8.5 is probably the right number, Ben. Again, any lower than that, they're going to get flooded with over money. They just are because of the roster.
For sure. Completely agree, Joe. I think if it's over 7.5, it's a lot of juice, probably pushing things up to 8 and a hook, and then maybe some even juice either way. I think it is a fascinating prop. I think it is a fascinating team to pay attention to. The pride of Bergen Catholic, the pride of the Garden State, has a new home. The former interim head coach in New Orleans, Darren Rizzi, who was the special teams coordinator of the Saints, now the new special teams coordinator, Joe, of the Denver Broncos. So he makes his way to work under Sean Payton, it would seem, once again. And a guy, obviously, Joe, that now has some head coaching experience in those logistical challenges that come with it, helping this Denver team improve on year number 1 under Bo Nix into year number 2.
Yeah, I mean, Darren Rizzi has already been mentioned. I mean, if you look at his career in terms of just special team, he was one of the best special team coaches throughout his tenure. Was there with Miami for a period of time and bounced around a number of different teams. That is his strong suit, right? Will he ever get another sniff of a head coaching job? Probably not. I mean, Cap came on, and I never really followed up with him on Pro Football Today, but he's like, special team guys never really get head coaching opportunities. And I always wanted to ask, why are they limited? But he did mention that, so we'll see how it plays out with Denver.
It's a great question, Joe, and it's a great point, I guess, by Adam Kaplan. The last real special teams coordinator that we think has really been a head coach is, of course, John Harbaugh. We'll talk more about that on the other side of the break here on Football Full Circle.
The winning edge. You've got it. But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us. But we're working on that. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. At the NBA All-Star Game Sunday in San Francisco, Steph Curry was named the All-Star MVP, the award named after Kobe Bryant. Curry scored 12 points in Team OG's 41-25 victory in the first of 40 finale against the Global Stars, winning the league's new round-robin tournament to cap off the festivities. LeBron James sat out the All-Star Game due to a foot and ankle injury. It's the first time he's missed the All-Star Game in his career. He also sat out the Lakers' win over the Pacers last weekend because of the same injury. Women's hoops on Sunday, number 7, UConn beat South Carolina 87-58. The number 4 Gamecocks 71-game home winning streak came to an end. William Byron captured the checkered flag for the second straight year at the Daytona 500, charging from 9th to 1st in the final overtime lap. Bundle auto and home, renters, or condo and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Friday is Valentine's Day, so if you still have shopping to do, then it's time to get to Macy's, because we make finding the perfect gift so easy. How easy? We have last-minute gifts that feel truly thoughtful, like fragrance gift sets from Yves Saint Laurent, Carolina Herrera, and Marc Jacobs, boxed and ready to give. Yeah, it doesn't get much easier than that. So head to Macy's and make their Valentine's Day a little more special, and your life a little bit easier. But hurry in, because you're almost out of time. These deals end Friday at Macy's.
Progressive presents Renter's MVP's Most Valuable Possessions. Today's MVP, Joe Fallon's bedroom mini fridge. Sure, this pint-sized chiller's max capacity is 3 soda cans, but what it lacks in stature, it makes up in cooling strength. Each beverage a perfect 37 degrees every time. And the 2 feet Joe walks to get a drink, priceless. That's why his mini fridge is today's MVP. Keep your most valuable possessions protected by bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
You're listening to SportsGrid.
Spreading the winning edge far and wide.
Terrestrial, internet, TV, satellite, and don't forget our mobile app.
Face it.
The winning edge is everywhere.
Somewhere there's a squirrel frustrated he can't get a phone.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
NFL news and notes around the National Football League. Joe, the coaching carousel at the head coaching spot has come to a close, but of course the New Orleans Saints still looking to fill out their coaching staff under Kellen Moore. We think Brandon Staley is the front runner to be the defensive coordinator, but we were just discussing Darren Rizzi. Now, what?
Staley. I mean, to be defensive whiz, and his defense was terrible in L.A. Right. But all right, let's bring him back to New Orleans.
You know what's funny? He's like a former quarterback. Played on the offensive side of the ball, but was the DC in LA under Sean McVay. Of course, you work under Sean McVay. Everybody thinks you're the smartest person in the room. So then he goes to LA, the other LA team, doesn't work out with the Bolts, spent last year, I think, as a defensive assistant in San Francisco, and now could be that defensive coordinator in New Orleans, who, of course, Brandon Staley was Kellen Moore's boss, head coach, offensive coordinator with the Bolts in 2023. Now Kellen Moore seemingly going to be Brandon Staley's boss in New Orleans in 2025. Always an interesting power dynamic shift.
It is, and again, Kellen Moore, right, for New Orleans needs about 3 years to get this team to maybe success. And again, you're in a similar situation to what Jacksonville has. The problem is, because the South is so bad in the NFC, it's been owned by Tampa Bay. Outside of the Buccaneers, they can compete. The problem is they have nobody. I actually think Carolina entering this year might have a better roster heading into the 25 campaign than the New Orleans Saints right now, Ben. So it's going to be an uphill battle. But does Staley bring them or elevate them any closer? I don't think so, but we'll see the players that they get in free agency and how they draft in late April, early May.
Yeah, we'll see. The Saints are a large rebuild, Joe. There is no doubt about it. Because Moore at his best, right, the offensive whiz kid. Well, you need a quarterback to be an offensive genius, and New Orleans feels kind of far from that. 9th overall pick at this moment. Doesn't sound overly optimistic. Derek Carr is going to return. So what are you doing at the quarterback spot? Who else is out there? It's one of the not overlooked parts, Joe, because I think everybody recognizes it and is aware of the situation. But for all of those teams, we broke it down around a quarter of the NFL. More than likely 6-7 teams are going to have a different starting quarterback to begin 2025 than they did to start 2024. There's not a ton of guys, though, to fill those spots. It's not like it's a deep quarterback class in the NFL draft or a super deep free agent quarterback class right now in this moment. So we'll have to determine. The interim head coach for most of this past season in the Big Easy, Darren Rizzi, now the special teams coordinator in Denver under Sean Payton. Joe, you were mentioning how you had had a conversation with Adam Kaplan, that special teams coordinators don't really end up getting head coaching nods. The most famous in the last 15, 20 years would probably be John Harbaugh, who is still doing it, of course, for Baltimore. But we've seen special teams coordinators often get elevated or promoted in the moment to the interim head coach. Logistically, it makes some sense. They're not the guys coordinating the schemes on offense or defense, so they can kind of be that delegator, the manager across the board to not take away from those active roles elsewhere. But, Joe, they often get in there. They make a stable floor. They have some level of success, but then often don't get those jobs. Darren Rizzi, who did have some success and made the Saints competitive while he was the interim head coach. Rich Bisaccia, a couple of years ago, seemed like he might actually be in consideration for that Raiders vacancy after taking over for the fired John Gruden. And yet, Joe, neither got a head coaching nod. Now both special teams coordinators in new spots.
Yeah, and they're like lifers, right? That's the one thing, is that the special teams coordinators, bounce around a majority of the time from team to team to team. And you're right, they do have success. They're usually passionate guys. Bisaccia was that way. Certainly Darren Rizzi was as well. And I did talk to a number of different Saints, even in New Orleans when I was down there. And I kept bringing, hey, Darren, Riz, how's the Rizzler? And every one of them, Rattler, Bud Means, that's my guy. That's my guy. That's my guy. Yeah. They all said the same thing about Darren Rizzi. He's a very vocal guy, but he's a player's coach. I don't know, but that would hold more weight to me when you talk about the younger players buying in and understanding and fighting for that team chemistry.
For sure.
Bisaccia and Rizzi are those type of passionate, coaches that sometimes it carries over. If I'm an owner of an organization, I would want more of that than as opposed to what you see with these calculated analytical coaches that don't have any correlation or any type of, I want to say, relationship with the players sometimes.
You can understand, Joe, I think, just from a logistical standpoint, maybe a common sense standpoint, why these genius offensive coordinators or even really stout defensive coordinators get these roles, right? They're seen as the creator, as the innovator, that they understand the X's and O's that will make the ultimate difference in a National Football League game between wins and losses. Kellen Moore, an offensive genius. Liam Cohen, he can be the guy, even as the head coach, to resurrect Trevor Lawrence's career. Ben Johnson in Chicago. But you would almost think that as a head coach, you're a little bit more hands-off. You have to be. You are maybe still the play caller in some spots, but you have to delegate. You have to oversee the entirety of the operation, not just because you have to, but it's your responsibility. And ultimately, you will be the one held accountable, right? Like, it is your job. Wins and losses, you can be mad at the offensive ranks, but wins and losses are on the head coach. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is a vow for the special teams coordinators. If they're the guys that understand how to run the operation, that have the smart guys around them to coordinate and call the plays and organize the schemes, then wouldn't you want kind of that manager-esque coach to kind of be the one making sure everything else is running smoothly in your operation? I mean, Nick Sirianni, a CEO-type head coach and now a Super Bowl champ as well. Didn't come from being a special teams coordinator, but still that kind of thought of how he oversees his organization. It doesn't seem to me, Joe, it would be outlandish to take a shot on a guy that has the buy-in from their roster, understands how to build a coaching staff with all of those smart people around him, and can be the guy that is hands-off, delegating, and manage the entire thing efficiently.
Especially when you've seen the lack of success from the defensive side of the ball. Eberflus coach, right? Dennis Allen didn't work out. Brandon Staley, another one. When you see those three coaches that were defensive masterminds and their responsibility couldn't carry over to be delegating, to your point, and their defenses were terrible at the end of their tenure, what does that tell you, right? That really says maybe we should go in a different route. That going the offense or the defensive way sometimes isn't the right answer, and maybe we have to get a better pulse of the team as a whole as to who could be that delegate to oversee all the operations. I don't know what goes on in these, these interviews for these head coaches, but you would think a smart owner would basically make a judgment based off of that as opposed to just schemes sometimes.
Yeah, you would, right? Especially because that owner, more than likely, has been successful in business and has to run his organization, his operation as such. Now, not all owners have been successful in business or have that success in business translate to success in the National Football League, but at least that mentality does shine through. On the other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit of college football here on FFC because it's the offseason around the NFL. There's not all that many headlines to bring you outside of what we have. We'll take an early look at some of those college football odds for 2025. Always a good time when you got the mastermind of the CFB Pigskin. Hopefully myself, Ben Stevens, with you. Rocking and rolling to start off a new week on Football Full Circle next.
We're not saying every SportsGrid listener is a legend, but you might start thinking about who's going to play you in the movie. Just saying. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The IRS will lay off thousands of probationary workers in the middle of tax season, according to sources familiar with the agency's plans, and cuts could happen as soon as this week. This update brought to you by Cintas. This comes as the Trump administration intensified sweeping efforts to shrink the size of the federal workforce by ordering agencies to lay off nearly all probationary employees who had not yet gained civil service protection. It is unclear how many IRS workers will be affected. A fatal accident involving multiple vehicles and a tractor-trailer shut down traffic for a time on a stretch of I-20 in the Dallas area early Sunday. The tractor-trailer fell off an interstate highway ramp and onto the ground before it eventually caught fire. When the tractor-trailer crashed to the ground, it hit another truck below and killed its driver, according to the Dallas County Sheriff's Department. No other fatalities have been confirmed. Local emergency crews in the area of the crash were already dispatched to the accident when Dallas firefighters were contacted at around 1:30 a.m. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
With Fidelity Wealth Management, a dedicated advisor gets to know you and your goals to build a comprehensive plan to help grow and protect your wealth. Backed by a team of specialists, they'll analyze all your accounts, even the ones they don't manage, to keep an eye on taxes and provide proactive portfolio insights that can help you unlock your wealth's full potential. Learn more at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
Confidence is knowing you're ready to handle whatever comes your way. That's what it feels like to take on your workday with Cintas. They make sure your AEDs are up to date, your fire extinguishers are tested and inspected, your floor mats are cleaned and delivered, and your workwear looks good, feels good, and is freshly laundered with the Cintas Apparel Plus program. So are you ready to take on today? Visit Cintas.com.
Oh, I'm ready!
And get ready for the workday.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. It is FFC, all a part of the SportsGrid Radio Network. Never too early, and I mean never too early to look at a new college football season. The guys back on campus for winter workouts. It sounds crazy, but spring ball coming up in just a couple of weeks in college football as well. So we'll take an early look, Joe, at some of those prices for a college football season. Really, since the last time that we spoke, we've got, or at least about college football, was so much dedicated to the National Football League over the last month, NFL postseason, Super Bowl build-up, early offseason news and notes and all of that. Joe, we now have the odds out for the Power Four conferences and those conference championship winners for 2025. We'll go in alphabetical order. Start with the ACC. Clemson is the favorite at plus 250. Miami has the second best price at plus 310. SMU at plus 460. Louisville rounds out the top four at 5-1. Those are the four teams: Clemson, Miami, SMU, Louisville, all at 5-1 or better. Joe, you have to double that price and then some, nearly triple the number, even to get to Georgia Tech, who has the fifth best price to win the ACC this year at 13-1. There is going to be a lot of expectation, Joe, on Clemson and Miami, who both might be top 10 teams in the AP preseason poll.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about Clemson that went, toe-to-toe, I'll say from an offensive perspective with the Texas Longhorns, lost that game. It should have been 7. They got stuffed on a 4th and goal from the 1-yard line, but they lose it by 14. Cade Klubnik comes back. They did take in transfer talent for the first time since I can't even remember during the Dabo Swinney era, right? So that's huge, just to fill out the roster and maybe potentially bring them closer to close the gap on some of these other teams. But you have Miami with Carson Beck. Now, I've heard reports too, and this is important, is Carson Beck completely dialed into the program in college football? There's been some reports that I'm serious, I don't know. There's been some reports saying that once he got the money, he hasn't been dialed in, and that's come from Miami boosters. So we'll see. We'll see how this situation plays out. It's deserving. Clemson and Miami 1 and 2 respectively. But Rhett Lashley has done a fantastic job in SMU. And they hit the ground running. They went toe-to-toe with the Tigers. Kevin Jennings and that crew last year, very physical from the defensive side of the ball until they got to face off against Penn State. And, Jeff Brom and Louisville. So those are the top 4 teams today. But you brought up Georgia Tech earlier. Brent Key has done a fantastic job. And, to not take away anything, they are going to be a team to watch. Do I think they can win the ACC? Maybe, but just the job that he has done bringing respectability back has been fantastic, Ben.
And you know that Haynes King is going to be back as well, Joe. Of course, that is a key staple to everything that Brent Key has done in his 2.5 years now as the full-time head coach in Atlanta. They are great as an underdog. We expect that to continue in 2025. Joe, I actually am surprised a little bit that Miami is not the favorite in the ACC because of the Carson Beck news. Has Carson Beck kind of regressed to the mean? Is the version of Carson Beck, the turnover-prone player in 2024, the version we see instead of the guy we thought was going to be a top 5 NFL pick at the end of 2023? That is going to be a question, of course, for the Canes. I would be optimistic by Clemson. They are going to be a team, Joe, that more than likely, as we do our projected college football playoff brackets for 2025, I picked to win the ACC. And, of course, it is chalky. But the Tigers figured out offensively this year what has really been holding them back the 3 previous years. Back to the numbers we saw under Deshaun Watson, under Trevor Lawrence. This year with Cade Klubnik taking that rise. He's back in 2025. Consistency in quarterback and OC now going into a 3rd straight year with Garrett Riley as the play caller. Clemson has been able, Joe, to even compete for ACC titles from 2021 on because their defense has been great as their offense stalled behind. It was the complete opposite in 2024. Now you get Tom Allen as your defensive coordinator there in Clemson, South Carolina, leaving Penn State, taking the Clemson DC job. That, I think, should help improve this Tigers defense that has the talent to do so. If you get that complete package, I do believe Clemson is the front runner in the ACC. The odds makers, of course, agree. Big 12 now, Joe. K-State and Arizona State, co-favorites at plus 550. Baylor 7-1. BYU plus 750. Kansas plus 750. Texas Tech plus 850. Iowa State and Utah both at 12-1 prices. Joe, I remember having the conversation around the Big 12, of course, in the expanded and realigned league this past offseason. And you and I both said the Big 12 might not be the best league in college football, but perhaps the most compelling because you could go up and down the board 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 out of 11 teams out of the 16 in the league could make a case for the conference championship. And the team who was picked dead last to win the conference title this year, Arizona State, of course, did do that and gave Texas a hell of a run in the college football playoff quarterfinals. So, Joe, this league, again, as you see from the odds, 6 teams there at a plus 850 price or shorter. 8 teams, half the league at 12-1 or shorter, with the favorites at plus 550. So we're talking separated by $6.50. You've got half of the league separated by about $6 to win the conference crown. Should be another very competitive season within the Big 12.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talk about Deion. Deion's got Liberty quarterback Caden Salter right on top of just that. It's 16-1. You talk about the prices. You can make the argument. Look at Rocco Beck. They made it to the Big 12 championship, lost to Cam Scatterbo and Arizona State. They're a 12-1 number with Matt Campbell and the crew. Granted, they lose players like Jaden Higgins, but you still have the nucleus of that team from an offensive, defensive perspective to potentially compete. Texas Tech takes huge losses, but Joey McGuire now has done a pretty good job. 850. Any one of these teams and make or surprise for the Big 12 this year.
We'll talk a little bit more Big 12 and an early peek at the Big 10 and SEC championship odds for 2025. Never too early for college football, especially on a show called Football Full Circle. More of it up next.
Luck is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the ticket.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Moneyline at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're going to love it, and you're going to love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7.
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. We'll take an early look at some of the conference championship odds around the country in CFB. Lisi, guy, you mentioned Colorado alongside TCU at a 16-1 price right now to win the Big 12. If you were to look at it, that means 12 of 16 teams in the Big 12 are 16-1 or shorter. And Colorado was a team that was a 9-win football team this past year. We'll see exactly how they continue to build in Boulder, of course, after the departure of Shedeur Sanders, Heisman Trophy winner in Travis Hunter, and some of those staples that Deion took from Jackson State to the FBS level at Colorado. But, Joe, you mentioned Caden Salter, also the number 2 quarterback recruit in this 2025 class. That would be Julian Lewis, Juju Lewis, who, of course, could factor in to that starting role from the very jump. And then you've got a very successful head coach of the Big 12 in Mike Gundy, hoping to bounce back from a disastrous season. But 30-1 on the Pokes is kind of crazy to see a team like Oklahoma State with that long of a price.
It is, but they have major quarterback concerns, right? So Bowman moves on. Garrett Rangel is there. You know, is he an elite quarterback? No. And obviously, Ollie Gordon, your best player, moves on to the NFL draft. So 30-1 price, you know, ever since Jim Knowles left, it's been a slow decline for that defense, right? You know, Mason was there. Derek Mason couldn't elevate the team. And then over the past couple of seasons, they were one of the worst in terms of the Big 12. So they have a bunch of holes to fill. He took a price cut as well. I wouldn't suggest back in Oklahoma State. I'd rather see it before I believe it. But, you know, Rich Rod is back in the Big 12 with West Virginia. We saw the success that he brought Jacksonville State. Might not be a bad option as well.
A guy that knows how to win at this level, that is for sure. Todd Grantham, now the defensive coordinator in Stillwater, of course, a veteran name that everybody knows around the football circles. All right, Joe, from the ACC and the Big 12, let's take a quick look at the Big 10, where the reigning national champs in Ohio State are the favorites at plus 170, Oregon plus 230, Penn State plus 380, and then a drop-off, doubling the price of the Nittany Lions to Michigan at 8-1, triple the price of Michigan to Indiana at 25-1. Will Kurt Signetti and the Hoosiers be able to continue success year over year? No surprise to see the reigning champs as the Big Ten favorites, but Oregon's not going anywhere. And, Joe, we have said it time and again. This is Penn State's year, right? On paper, this is the team that can finally knock off the Buckeyes in the regular season and win the Big Ten championship. We'll see if James Franklin and crew can this year in State College.
Ben, I wouldn't bet Penn State with your money. How about that? Like, you know, there's another one. You know, maybe from a schedule perspective, you could say, yeah, they could step up. But in a big spot, not just James Franklin, but Drew Aller as well, I would need to see it before I believe. I'd rather be not a no play than having money on them to potentially, you know, jump and knock off the likes of Oregon and some of the big boys. I would take a shot on Oregon and Michigan if we're talking Big Ten championship. Maybe Sherrone Moore in year 2 could find success. He's gotten the first year under his belt. Now he knows what it takes in terms of the responsibilities. And Oregon is going to be there. Dan Lanning is still a good coach. Is he elite? Only time will tell, but he should have the Ducks within striking distance.
A team that I think is completely mispriced is Illinois at 60-1. They returned 17 key starters, including their quarterback in Luke Altmaier and many defensive players on that side of the ball. Now, are they going to win the Big Ten? Can they triumph over teams like Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, so on and so forth? Maybe not. Are they going to be in the running of that title race come November? I would say so. Maybe trying to claim one of those spots in Indianapolis. Quickly here, Lisi Guy, let's get to the SEC. Texas, the favorite at plus 210 in front of Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee. Plus 210 for the Longhorns. UGA plus 390. Bama and Tennessee both 17-1. Is it all right to see Arch Manning and the Longhorns in that top spot?
Yeah, it's all right, but the value's coming on teams like Georgia with a 9.5 win total and LSU with 20-1 shot to win the Natty. I think that those are the teams. And when we talk about offensive talent, LSU is the best heading into the year, better than Texas, in my opinion.
I'm not really sure why Georgia is where they are. 9.5 the win total for UGA. Hefty juice on the over. If you don't believe in Kirby Smart and the Dogs, I don't know. I mean, they got so much talent returning defensively as well. I think Gunnar Stockton's going to be all right. He's Joe Lisi. I'm Ben Stevens. Talk to you tomorrow. Football Full Circle, noon Eastern time on Sports Grid Radio.
Now you've done it. You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the Sports Grid Radio Network.